Hi everyone, let us continue the concept of MCP, that is the architecture we were discussing in the previous video. So in this video what we will be discussing is, we'll be discussing the formats, how it is being represented in JSON RPC with an example. So first let's start with the data layer. Already we discussed that there are two important layers, one is data layer, another one is transport layer. We will start with data layer. Here we provide a step-by-step walkthrough of the MCP client server interaction. So first step, as we discussed during the lifecycle management, is the initialization. So during initialization what happens is, there is a capability negotiation handshake. Both the server and the client tells, these are my capabilities, the server tells, as well as the client tells, okay, these are my capabilities, right? Both of them tell their own capabilities. That happens during the initialization. So client sends an, first the client only will send it, right? Because server is always available, multiple clients can connect it. So the initialization happens from the client side. Client sends an initialization request to establish the connection and negotiate supported features. It asks for what are the features that are available. So this is just an example format that we can look at it, right? So this is initialized request. This is being sent by the client. You can see the format is JSON RPC2 ID. This ID is important because that's how they verify the response. This particular request and response is being matched through the ID. And you can see method is initialized and it tells some parameters. This protocol version is also important. The protocol version should be compatible. When the server is responding, it will give the same protocol version, right? And now it is telling its capabilities. Now the client is telling elicitation is my capability. It has not told anything else. It is telling I have the capability of taking elicitation, and it's giving its own information like what is the name. Name is example client and its version, right? And this is the response that is being given by the server. You can see the same JSON RPC for version. ID is 1 and you can see the result, right? This is the result. Protocol version is same and it is telling its capabilities. It is having tools and list change true means this is where it tells that it will give notification. It is not required that all the servers will be having notifications, having the capability of giving notifications. When they tell list change true, right? Then it means that they will provide notifications, right? When there is some change in the list or when there is some addition in the list and so on. And resources, it is having resources as well and it is giving its own information, what is the name and the version, right? That's what, as we discussed, that as this protocol version field is very important. It prevents communication errors, right? When there are multiple versions, when we are having MCP, there can be multiple versions also running, right? So those versions matching, everything happens by this particular protocol version, and also it is mutually compatible version is negotiated, and otherwise the connection will be terminated. If the version is different, then the connection is not going to be established, right? And capability discovery allow each party to know what are they. Now as we saw, the server is also telling the capability like it's having tools and it will send list changed and so on. And the client side also we see that it is telling elicitation. This is what is capability discovery that happens during the initialization phase. Identity exchange is happening through the particular ID. ID is helping us, that ID 1 we saw, that is helping us, as well as the version information is helping to have, if there is any problem, then debugging and compatibility check can be done using those version information and so on. Yeah, so as we discussed, this is the client capability elicitation. So this client declares it can work with user interaction request, right? It can receive elicitation, create method calls. And when we saw the server capabilities, it had list changes true. As mentioned, server supports the list, that is a tool primitives, and it can send tools bar list change notification when its tool list is changed. And resources, server also supports the resource primitives. It can handle resource list, resources read methods and so on. So when the server is sending the notification. This will be the format in which it will send. We can see that it is mentioning what JSON RPC is being followed, and you can see method, right? Method is notification initialized, and it doesn't expect any response from the client. So during the initialization, the AI application MCP client manager, what happens? Now the MCP host is only referred here as MCP client manager, right? So establish the connection to the configured server and store their capabilities for later use. And the application will use this information, whatever it has got from the server. So it will be maintaining a registry of server, right? It will just maintain what are the servers that are registered and what are the capabilities, right? So the application will be using this information to determine which server can provide what type of functionality, what tools are there, what resources are there, what prompts are there, right? And whether they will support real-time updates or not. So this is a pseudocode which is just telling us how it will happen. You can see that it is async method. Async methods are actually asynchronous method. They are non-blocking methods, right? So when this is running on the background, the server will be still functioning. It will not get blocked because of this particular code. It will be running on the background, and the server will be running and providing services to other requests. That's the main objective when we tell async, right? And whenever there is a async method, when we call that async method, we should use await, right? So we can see here, this is async with you are having the client, right? Server configuration as read, right? And now it is establishing a client session, right? This is the AI application initialization. You can see that now it is creating a client session and it is initializing, right? When it is initializing, it is calling the session.initialize, and you can see that we have used await before it because this is a asynchronous call. And if init response, right? You check whether the init response has got tools, right? Init response.capabilities.tools, if they are available, then you are putting in the registry of the client, right? So you are telling app.register MCP server, you tell the session and supported tools equal to true, and you keep the things ready, right? App.set server ready of session. This is just a glimpse of what will happen when a host, basically MCP host or AI application is initializing a connection with the client. So tool discovery, what happens is the connection is established and the client discovers the available tools by also in tool discovery. In initialization, what happens is the server is just telling I am having tools, I am having resources, or I am having prompts, right? It doesn't give the list. Now when the client wants to know the list of tools, it gives a request. It will be a separate request, right? So that's what you can see, that the connection is established. Now the client can discover. It will send a request to find out what are the available tools or list, right? So you can see this is how it will send from the client side. This is second request. You can see the ID. The method is tools where list. So you want to know the list of tools. This is the response from the server. You can see the same jargons over there, right? Like JSON RPC 2, ID 2 and so on. The result you can see there are tools which are being provided by this particular server. It is a list of dictionaries, right? So you can see the first tool is calculator arithmetic. Name, there is name as well as title. Name is going to be unique one, right? Name is going to be a unique identifier in the MCP pool, right? That should be carefully designed so that it is giving what is the role of the tool as well. And title is something which for human understanding, and then the description. The description tells what this particular tool will do, right? Basically now it's a very simple calculator, so it is telling perform mathematical calculations. And then you give the schema, right? In the schema you tell the type is object is going to be generic, and what are the properties, right? When you look at the properties, there will be expression. The expression will be of type string, and description is mathematical expression to evaluate, right? And here you are telling this is required, expression is required, you have mentioned that, right? it is a mandatory parameter. Basically the calculator is going to evaluate the expression. So the expression is going to be the input for this which has been mentioned. And another next tool. So it is actually a list of tools. You can see it's a dictionary. This is over. And then next is weather. Weather current is the name of the tool. And the title is weather information. Description tells get with current weather information from any location worldwide. And now we are telling the input that should be sent for this particular tool, right? That is location which will be a string which will have city name, address or coordinates like latitude, longitude, everything. And then also you tell the and then the units, right? Units will be something like metric or imperial or Kelvin. In what particular unit we want the temperature, right? The temperature units to use in response. That's what you are giving in the description. So you tell what type, and enum is telling any one of these, right? And default is metric. So if you are not mentioning, actually there are two parameters, right? Location and units. Location is must, right? That is mandatory. That's what you can see here. Required is location, but metric is not going to be like compulsory, right? If you are not mentioning, then it's going to use metric itself, right? That is unit. Sorry, unit is not going to be mandatory. It can be optional parameter. If the user is not mentioning the unit, then it will give in metrics, right? So this is what is tool discovery, right? Basically the tool list will not have any parameter. The client will not give any parameters. The response contains the array of tools as we have seen, and this will allow the servers to express multiple tools simultaneously, which is giving the clear boundaries between the different functionalities. Each tool object will require, as we discussed, each tool object will have a name. Name is going to be the unique identifier for the tool. As we discussed in the MCP pool, this is going to be the unique identifier with a server's namespace. So it will be good to have a clear naming pattern reflecting what is the usage of the tool. And title is something which is human readable, displays name for the tool, the client can show us, and then description is going to be the detailed explanation of what the tool does and what it uses. Input schema, as we discussed, is a JSON schema that is going to tell what are the expected input parameters and what in a type of validation is there, and clear documentation about required and the optional parameters. That is what is given in the input schema. And how this works is, a application fetches the tools from all the connected MCP servers. As we discussed, it will put in a registry. It will combine them and put it in a tool registry that the language model can access. So this will allow LLMs to understand what actions it can perform and automatically generate the appropriate tool calls during the conversation. So for example, if the query is related to some calculation, some expressions coming, means it will call the calculator tool. If the query is something related to temperature, weather, then that will be using the weather tool. Like this, multiple tools will be registered in the registry, tool registry, and when the query comes, the server will decide, or the LLM can decide. It will look at the tool registry and decide what tool it has to call. This is just the pseudocode explaining how it happens. So initially the available tools are empty. For session in this app.mcp server.sessions, you are getting the list of tools from the server, right? Once again, it's a asynchronous function, so we are using await before calling it, and then we are adding the list of tools to the available tools, and then you register it so that it will be available in the registry, right? So it follows the structured format and it gives a clear communication between the server and the client, and we are using proper tool names like what we used, like weather, current and so on, right? That previous thing was we just got the list of tools. Now you want to call a particular tool, how it can be made. That's what we are going to discuss now. So you can see here, this is a tool call request that will be made by the client. The JSON RPC and ID is here. Apart from that, you tell method. Previously we used tools slash list. Now we are using tools slash call, and you give the parameters. The name is weather current, that is the name of the tool. and the arguments, location and the units, right? And now this is the response on the server side. Once again, JSON RPC and ID, and you can see the result, right? The content is having type is text, right? And you can see the text is current weather in San Francisco. So this is the response given by the tool. Right now, when we look at the tool execution, these are the key elements. Name exactly should match the tool, otherwise you will get errors, and the arguments are going to be the input parameters that we provide as defined, and then here its location and units. Of course, it's optional. If you are not giving, metric will be used, and unique ID for request response correlation, right? And response demonstrates the MCP's flexible content systems, like content array. You can have an array of responses, like sometimes you can have even text, images and resources when you return the content, right? So the content type actually be mentioned as text, right? In this case it is text. Sometimes if it is image, you will mention as image, right? So the content type is going to tell what type of field we are going to return. And also we will have a structured output. The response provides actionable information that the AI application can use as context for language model interaction. And how it works in AI applications: when the language model decides to use a tool, suppose if it understands that the question given by the user is beyond its capabilities, or it has got what knowledge it has got beyond that, means then it is going to use tools. So during the conversation it will check for tools, and it will intercept the tool call, route it to the appropriate MCP server, execute it and return the results back to the LLM as a part of the conversation flow. Now the LLM can use whatever is returned by the tool, and it can use for further processing. So this is just a pseudocode. It's a async function, handle tool call. So first we are checking, right? For this tool call we are sending conversation and then tool name and the arguments. So the session takes find MCP session for the tool, whether you establish a new session or if it is available, that particular session is taken, and then you are calling the tool, right? You are calling the tool with the tool name and the arguments. That result is there, and you are adding the result of the call to the conversation. So you can see here conversation dot add tool result to this particular thing. So when the servers are aware, so we have just discussed, first we have established the initialization, right? We made the connection from the client to the server. Next we discussed how we can know the list of tools, right? Tools/list, and then when we want to call a particular tool, how it can be made. That's what we discussed third. Fourth one is how list change notifications will be done, right? This is being done only by the server, right? So the when do we do this is when there is a change in the tools that we already discussed, right? This is the format of the request. The request will have the JSON RPC version as well as the method. You can see notification bar tools/list underscore changed. As we know, there is no response required whenever you are giving notification, and it is only capability based. All the servers are not going to provide notifications. Only if it has mentioned, declared that list change equal to true during the initialization, then it has the capability, otherwise it's optional. And also it's event driven. A server decides when to send notification based on the internal. It's not, no one is going to explicitly initialize. Okay, so the server will decide based on the internal state changes when to send notifications and so on. It's going to be completely dynamic and responsive. So upon receiving this notification, the client, how it will react is, it will just update the tool list, right? How it can do is just it will make another one call to the server. So once again it is going to make request tools/list. So completely it will replace the previous list of tools that has been maintained in the registry for this particular server. It will just change it. That's the thing, right? So what is the advantage of having notifications is dynamic environment. So whenever there is some changes on the server, external dependencies or user permission that can be easily given, and the clients do not need to poll. Otherwise, every time the client has to know whether there is an updation on the server, everything. So it has to poll. That can be avoided. So that makes the life easier. And also there is a consistency, ensures that the client always have accurate information about the server capabilities. And also it will help in enabling the responsive AI to be like real-time collaborations can be easily made to adapt to changes. That's the major objective. And how this works is when the AI application receives a notification about the change in the tool, it immediately, as we saw, it is going to refresh its tool registry and updates the LLM capabilities. This ensures the ongoing conversations have most current set of tools. That is the major advantage of having these notifications, right? And this is just a pseudocode that shows how notifications are being handled. So this once again is asynchronous function. So you just, once you get a notification, then the client is going to get the list of tools from the server and it is going to update the available tools, right? So you mention the session as well as the tools and it check if the conversation is active, then it is going to just update the conversation as well the new capabilities, so that the conversation can also use the changes that is being mentioned or new tools if added by the server, right? So this is the overall functioning of a MCP server. So in the next videos we will be seeing how a MCP server can be used with a client and so on. Thank you.